It was Prince Sagan's first day at the Terran Naval Academy, and the grisly specimen greeted him and his 11 fellow exchange students as they filed into the lab. A wave of disgust and unease rippled through the delegation. Sagan locked eyes with the Andromedan's vacant black orbs, its gray flesh pinned grotesquely to the sterile white tile. He swallowed hard. This was not the welcome he expected from a supposedly civilized species. Andromedan physiology is a required course for all first-year cadets, boomed a gravelly voice. Admiral Grayson Sinclair, the Academy's commandant, emerged from the shadows. His weathered face held no warmth. The Terran fleet must be prepared to neutralize any threat to humanity, even from our so-called allies. Sagan bristled at the implication, but held his tongue. The Andromedan Empire needed this trade deal with the resource-hungry Terrans. Enduring 6 months of crude intimidation and primitive conditions seemed a small price to secure his people's prosperity. Then the training fleet appeared, and Sagan's arrogance shattered. Sagan stumbled back, his eyes wide. This was no mere drill. This was a display of military dominance far beyond anything he had witnessed in the Andromedan Royal Navy. The sight rocked Sagan to his core, a sudden, stark realization that humans were not the primitive builders he had believed. They were an advanced war machine, and he was standing in the heart of their power. 10,000 ships, Lieutenant Ward said later, as the fleet powered down to dock. The rapid reaction force that guards humanity's interests across the stars, a mere fraction of the full Terran armada. His eyes glinted. Still believe you can dictate terms to us, Prince? The first weeks at the Terran Naval Academy passed in a brutal blur of physical training and mental conditioning. Prince Sagan and his fellow Andromedan cadets struggled to keep pace with the relentless human instructors, their bodies screaming in agony as they were pushed beyond their limits again and again. Their confrontations became a daily occurrence, earning Sagan a string of demerits in the ire of their instructors. Only Zara, the brilliant Andromedan engineer, refused to rise to the bait. She stayed up late in the data labs, her brow furrowed as she pored over the Academy systems. In the chaos that followed, instructors screaming orders, medics rushing to the scene, Sagan locked eyes with Hawkins, saw his own fear reflected back at him. Fear for the future, for their worlds on a collision course. He made a decision, strode across the hangar ignoring the startled looks, placed his hand on Hawkins's shoulder, an unthinkable gesture between rivals. For a long moment, Hawkins said nothing, then slowly he nodded. I'm listening. As Sagan outlined his plan for a joint exercise, a mixed team taking on their greatest challenge yet, he felt a flicker of hope buried beneath the fear. If he and Hawkins could forge an alliance, perhaps their people could too. Final approach, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Prepare for landing. As the shuttle touched down with a muffled thud, Sagan exchanged a glance with Hawkins. The human's eyes were hard, but there was something else there too. A flicker of uncertainty that mirrored Sagan's own feelings. She tossed Sagan a datapad. First challenge starts now. Good luck. You'll need it. As the instructor strode away, Sagan studied the pad's screen. A topographical map of the area appeared, with a blinking red dot marking their target, an abandoned mining outpost 5 kilometers to the north. We move in 2-person teams, Hawkins said, stepping forward. Leapfrog formation, watch for ambush points. Sagan bristled at the human's assumption of command, but bit back a retort. This wasn't the time for petty rivalries. Agreed, he said. But we should send our best climber ahead as a scout. Zira? The lithe Andromedan nodded, her scales shimmering in the harsh light. Without a word, she activated her grav boots and bounded away in long, graceful arcs. The next hours blurred into a grueling slog across Phobos's treacherous terrain. They faced simulated attacks from all angles, snipers hidden in the shadowy craters, spider-like drones that erupted from the regolith, even a nerve gas that seeped through microscopic suit punctures, leaving them gasping and disoriented. Sagan and Hawkins clashed repeatedly over strategy. The human favored aggressive pushes, while Sagan argued for a more cautious approach. Their bickering cost precious time and energy. It wasn't until they reached the mining outpost that the situation truly deteriorated. As they breached the airlock, klaxons blared. Red emergency lights bathed the corridor in an eerie glow. "Containment breach in Sector 7, an emotionless computer voice announced. "Lethal radiation detected. All personnel evacuate immediately." "Too risky," Hawkins argued. "We don't know what's in there." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Hawkins nodded. "Lead the way, Your Highness." As the alarms faded, Sagan slumped against a wall, exhausted. Hawkins sat heavily beside him. "Not bad," the human said, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "For a royal squid." Their moment of camaraderie was short-lived. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing their next challenge, a simulated diplomatic crisis that would push their newfound cooperation to its limits. Meanwhile, in a darkened lab deep within the academy, Zara hunched over a terminal, her fingers dancing across the haptic interface. Lieutenant Ward stood watch at the door, his expression grim. "I've almost got it," Zara murmured. "Just need to... there." The screen erupted with data, schematics, communiques, mission parameters. Ward's eyes widened as he scanned the information. "This can't be right," he whispered. "An attack on an Andromedan colony, using our own weapons?" "Breach detected in Level 3 encryption." Zara's voice crackled through Ward's earpiece. "We're in." Ward's fingers tightened on his pulse rifle as he scanned the darkened corridor. "Copy. What have you found?" "It's worse than we thought," Zara replied, her voice tight with tension. "They're planning an attack on the Andromedan mining colony at Epsilon Eridani using human weapons." "Exactly, and there's more. Detailed plans to fabricate evidence against the Andromedan Empire. They want to give human forces a pretext to seize Andromedan territories." "Bastards!" Ward hissed. "We need to get that data out of here, now!" As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lights bathed the corridor in an eerie glow. Zara, Lyra were compromised. Rendezvous at Extraction Point Alpha. Ward sprinted down the hallway, his boots echoing on the metal grating. He rounded a corner and found himself face-to-face with a squad of corporate security forces. "Halt!" the lead guard shouted, raising his weapon. Ward didn't hesitate. He dove into a roll, plasma bolts sizzling over his head. Coming up in a crouch, he fired a burst from his rifle, dropping 2 guards before they could react. The air filled with the acrid smell of ozone as energy weapons discharged. Ward felt a searing pain in his side as a bolt grazed him. Gritting his teeth, he pressed on, determined to reach Zara and Lyra. He found them pinned down in a storage bay, corporate forces closing in from multiple directions. Ward unleashed suppressing fire, giving the Andromedans a chance to break cover and join him. "This way!" he shouted, gesturing toward an emergency exit. As they ran, Ward felt his strength ebbing. The wound in his side burned with each step. He stumbled, nearly falling. Zara caught him, her scales cool against his feverish skin. "Lieutenant!" "Keep going," Ward gasped. "Get the data out." He pushed Zara away, turning to face the approaching security team. Raising his rifle, he prepared to make his final stand. Suddenly, the wall beside him exploded inward. Through the breach stepped Prince Sagan, resplendent in gleaming combat armor. Behind him, Commander Hawkins led a team of Academy cadets, their weapons at the ready. "Need a hand, Lieutenant?" Hawkins asked, a grim smile on his face. Ward had never been so glad to see the human commander in his life. The extraction team moved with ruthless efficiency, human and Andromedan fighters working in perfect synchronization. Sagan wielded an energy staff with deadly grace, arcs of crackling power felling corporate troops left and right. As they fought their way toward the exit, Zara's voice cut through the chaos. "The facility's defenses are still active. We'll never make it out unless someone shuts them down." Sagan turned to Hawkins, conflict evident in his eyes. "We can't leave her." The acrid smoke of battle cleared, revealing the devastation wrought upon the corporate facility. Prince Sagan surveyed the scene, his scales shimmering with exertion. Beside him, Commander Hawkins wiped blood from a gash above his eye, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "We did it," Hawkins said, a note of disbelief in his voice. Hours later, They stood before a holographic projection of Admiral Sinclair and Ambassador Helena Wolf. The Admiral's face was grim, while Wolf's eyes darted between the human and Andromedan with barely concealed anxiety. "Gentlemen," Sinclair began, "the situation has escalated. The Andromedan High Council is demanding blood for the attempted false flag operation." Sagan felt his heart quicken. Surely they can't be serious. After what we've uncovered— "They're deadly serious, Your Highness," Wolf interrupted, "which is why we need you and Commander Hawkins to lead a joint task force to the Rho system." The ambassador outlined the plan. Sagan listened, his mind racing. It was audacious, perhaps even foolhardy, but it might be their only chance to prevent all-out war. "You leave in 6 hours," Sinclair concluded. "Assemble your team." The rest of the force was a mix of human Marines and Andromedan Royal Guardsmen. Sagan watched them board the sleek stealth ships, noting the tension between the two species. They'd have to work as one if they hoped to succeed. Sagan checked his weapon one last time. Beside him, Hawkins did the same. "Ready?" the human asked. The bay doors opened, and they plunged into the unknown. Void of Rho system space, their mission to prevent interstellar war hanging by a thread. "Got it!" Zara exclaimed, her scales flushing with triumph. Their exfiltration was as chaotic as their entry. Alarms blared and security forces swarmed, but the combined strength of human and Andromedan fighters proved unstoppable. They reached their stealth ships just as corporate reinforcements arrived, slipping away into the inky blackness of space. Sagan stood before the Andromedan High Council, his voice firm as he addressed the assembled dignitaries. "We have been given a rare opportunity," he said, "a chance to forge a true partnership built on mutual respect and understanding." As the dust settled, Sagan found himself drawn to a bold new vision. He approached Hawkins with an idea that would have seemed impossible just months before. "A cultural exchange program," Sagan explained, his eyes alight with enthusiasm. "At your Terran Naval Academy, the best and brightest from both our peoples, training side by side." Hawkins raised an eyebrow. "You really think that could work?" "I think we have to try," Sagan replied. "It's the only way to ensure lasting peace." The proposal met with resistance on both sides. Old prejudices died hard. But Sagan and Hawkins, now hailed as heroes for averting war, threw their full weight behind the initiative. After months of debate and careful negotiation, the program received approval. 18 months later, Zara stood at the gates of the Terran Naval Academy, watching as a new group of Andromedan cadets arrived. Among them was Tali, a young warrior with fire in her eyes and chip on her shoulder. "Welcome to Earth," Zara said, her voice carrying a hint of both pride and apprehension. "This is where we build our future." In his opulent office on Earth, a corporate CEO leaned back in his chair, a cruel smile playing across his lips. "Let them have their peace," he murmured. "We'll show them the true cost of crossing us." The stage was set for a new crisis that would test the fledgling alliance to its very core. The fragile peace between humans and Andromedans began to fracture mere months after its inception. Prince Sagan paced the dimly lit chamber of the Andromedan High Council, his scales shimmering with agitation. Ambassador Helena Wolf's hologram flickered, her expression grim. "The United Earth government condemns these actions. We're implementing stricter regulations on—" Sagan's eyes narrowed. "And what would you suggest, Commander? Gunships in Andromedan space? Military occupation of corporate holdings?" "There's been an incident at the Terran Naval Academy," he said quietly. Across the galaxy, on Earth, Admiral Sinclair surveyed the damage to the training vessel. Scorch marks marred its hull, where it had nearly collided with another ship during what should have been a routine exercise. Cadet Alex Stryker stood at rigid attention, his face a mask of impossibly strong fury. Beside him, the Andromedan warrior Tali radiated defiance, her scales flickering between deep crimson and electric blue. "Explain," Sinclair growled. "Sir," Stryker began, "Cadet Tali deliberately disobeyed my orders during the simulation. She—" "Your orders were foolish," Tali hissed. "I simply chose the superior tactical option." "You nearly got us all killed?" As the cadets were dismissed, Stryker found himself walking alongside Lieutenant Ward. The older man's limp was barely noticeable now, though his eyes still held shadows of past battles. "Permission to speak freely?" Stryker asked. Ward nodded. "Always." Before Stryker could respond, the Academy's emergency sirens blared to life. Across every view screen, a breaking news report flashed. "Terror attack on Xenar colony. Dozens of Andromedans dead." "By force?" Sinclair's voice was ice. "And prove every fear-mongering demagogue right about us?" Stryker watched the speech with growing unease. Something about Caldwell's words nagged at him, a pattern he couldn't quite place. He turned to find Tally watching him, her usual hostility replaced by something almost like curiosity. "You see it too, don't you?" she asked quietly. Stryker nodded slowly. "Something's not right. The attack on Xenar, Caldwell's speeches, it's all too convenient." "Then perhaps," Tally said, "it is time we work together to uncover the truth." As they slipped away from the crowded concourse, neither noticed the shadowy figure tracking their movements. In a darkened communications hub, an encrypted message was sent. "Subjects Stryker and Tally have taken the bait, proceeding to Phase 2. "Senator Caldwell," Tally hissed, her scales flickering with anger. "He's behind it all." Stryker nodded grimly. "And he's not stopping with Xenar. Look at this." "We have to warn them," Stryker said, already reaching for his comm unit. A sudden explosion rocked the station. Alarms blared as the lights flickered and died. In the chaos that followed, Stryker and Tally fought their way through panicked crowds to reach the command center. They burst in to find Prince Sagan and Commander Hawkins locked in heated debate. "It's Caldwell," Stryker shouted over the din. "He's activated a rogue AI. Those ships are targeting Andromedan worlds." Sagan's eyes widened in horror. "My people—" Hawkins swore, his fists clenching. "How long do we have?" "Minutes," Tally replied, her voice tight. "Maybe less." Sagan turned to Zara, who was already bent over a console with her tech team. "Options?" "We have an experimental cyber warfare package," Zara said, her claws flying over the interface. "It might be able to override the AI's control, but we'd need to get it directly into the ship's command arrays." All eyes turned to him. "I can do it," Elijah continued. "Strip down a fighter, load it with the virus payload. If I can get close enough to the main control node—" Sagan's eyes narrowed in concentration. "Not if I guide him. My subspace tracking skills can plot a course through their defensive grid." Tally watched the exchange, her hearts pounding. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. "Do it," Hawkins ordered. What followed was a blur of activity. Elijah's fighter launched, a skeletal thing built for speed and stealth. Sagan's voice crackled over the comm, guiding the human through a deadly maze of automated defenses. On the main view screen, antimatter weapons began their charging cycles. The assembled team watched in horror as the first Andromedan world came into firing range. "Almost there." Elijah's voice was strained. "Wait, something's wrong. They knew we were coming." The feed from Elijah's fighter showed heavily armed shock troops converging on the control array. Plasma fire erupted, tearing through the fighter's hull. Sagan's eyes blazed with desperate intensity. "Not yet. There's one more option." He strode to a nearby weapons locker, punching in a complex code. The door hissed open, revealing a collection of ancient Andromedan artifacts. "What are those?" Stryker asked. "An artificial singularity rift," Tally breathed, her scales shimmering in awe. "Now, Elijah," Hawkins shouted. The human's damaged fighter streaked toward the control array. Plasma bolts sizzled past as Elijah made his final approach. The uplink flashed green just as the shock troops closed in. 10 seconds ticked by as Zara's virus bored into the compromised systems. On the interface, antimatter containment fields flickered dangerously. "Come on," Stryker muttered. "Come on." "Neither is Ward," Hawkins added grimly. "Or Lyra. They were providing cover fire for the extraction." Sagan's shoulders slumped. The cost of their victory deeply affected upon him. "And Caldwell?" Tally asked. Hawkins shook his head. "Gone, slipped away in the chaos. Sagan gazed out at the stars, his expression unreadable. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Caldwell is still out there, and there will be others like him." Hawkins nodded slowly. "Agreed, but there will be resistance, on both sides." "Then we'll face it together," Zara said, her scales gleaming with grit. As they began to plan their next moves, none of them noticed the shadowy figure slipping away from the command center. In a hidden communications hub, a message was sent. Phase 1 complete. Proceed to contingency protocols. The battle was won, but a greater conflict loomed on the horizon. The true test of human Andromedan solidarity was only just beginning. The command center's view screen flickered to life, revealing Prince Sagan's battered face. His scales, normally a vibrant azure, were muted and dull. Beside him, Lieutenant Ward's arm was in a sling, while Lyra sported a nasty gash across her forehead. Commander Hawkins leaned forward, his fingers tightening on the edge of the console. "What's our next move, Your Highness?" Sagan's eyes hardened. "We formalize this alliance, now, before our enemies can regroup." Zara stepped up, her claws tapping a rapid rhythm on her datapad. "I've already begun drafting the framework for a joint military coalition, but we'll need official ratification from both sides." As if on cue, the room's speakers crackled with an incoming transmission. Captain Drake's face filled a secondary screen, his eyes sharp in a hard line. Hawkins opened his mouth to retort, but Sagan cut him off. "Because we're stronger together, Captain. Caldwell and his ilk would see us tear each other apart. We can't let that happen." The transmission abruptly cut out. Zara's scales flickered in agitated crimson. "He's not alone in his sentiments. My sources report unrest in the Andromedan royal court. Queen Azala faces accusations of allowing her son to be swayed by human corruption." Sagan's expression darkened. "My mother will weather the storm. We have bigger problems." Sagan nodded. "Our intelligence suggests Caldwell fled there after the attack. He's made contact with Victor Krav, a rogue tech baron with a grudge against both our governments." A priority alert chimed, drawing all eyes back to the main view screen. A young human cadet's face appeared, his expression a mixture of fear and tenacity. The screen split, revealing security footage from the Terran Naval Academy. Stryker and Tali were hunched over a terminal, their faces illuminated by scrolling lines of code. Nearby, another cadet watched them intently, his hand hovering near a concealed weapon. "That's Lee Reese," Sinclair said, his voice tight. "Caldwell's protege." Sagan's eyes widened. "He's been compromised. Stryker and Tali must have uncovered something." Hawkins was already moving. "I'm heading to the academy. We need to secure Reese before—" "Teleporter," Zara hissed. Sagan's eyes blazed with a cold fury. "We go to Tax. We find Krav. We get Tali back." He paused, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And we end this, once and for all." "This is it," Hawkins muttered. "Everything we've fought for comes down to this moment." Sagan nodded, his scales shimmering with nervous energy. As they entered, a hush fell over the crowd. Queen Azala, resplendent in her ceremonial regalia, locked eyes with her son. Her expression was unreadable. As Sinclair spoke, Captain Drake leaned close to a cluster of human delegates, his words barely audible. "Don't be fooled by their pretty words. The siege of Proxima Centauri proved what these lizards are capable of." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the human contingent. Across the aisle, Andromedan nobles cast suspicious glances at their terrestrial counterparts. Sagan gritted his teeth, fighting the urge to intervene. He knew the slightest misstep could derail the entire proceedings. "What was that?" Hawkins demanded, reaching for his comm unit. Before anyone could respond, the assembly hall plunged into darkness. Emergency klaxons wailed as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. "We're losing life support," Zara shouted, her claws flying over a nearby console. "Multiple hull breaches detected." Panic erupted as delegates scrambled for the exits. Sagan grabbed Hawkins' arm, shouting to be heard over the chaos. "It's Krav! He's made his move!" The station lurched violently. Through the viewport, Sagan caught a glimpse of a stealth-shielded vessel materializing out of nowhere. Mercenaries, Hawkins growled. They're boarding us. The command center's blast doors slammed shut, trapping the delegates inside. On the main screen, a familiar face appeared. Lieutenant Reese, his eyes cold and calculating. Apologies for the interruption, Reese sneered, but I'm afraid this little alliance of yours is over. Zara stumbled backward, plasma burns sizzling across her scales. Krov's henchmen had breached the inner sanctum. Tali appeared seemingly out of nowhere, pulling Zara to safety behind a fallen support beam. Her eyes met Sagan's across the room, conveying volumes in a single glance. As the station burned around them, Sagan's comm unit crackled to life. The message chilled him to his core. Your Highness, a panicked voice reported, Antares Prime has fallen. The royal palace is under siege. They're demanding your immediate withdrawal from the summit. Sagan's mind raced. The alliance, their last hope for peace, was crumbling before his eyes. He turned to Hawkins, his voice low and urgent. We have one option left, Krov's singularity prototype. Hawkins's eyes widened in shock. You can't be serious. The collateral damage would be... As mercenaries pounded on the blast doors, Sagan faced the hardest decision of his life. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and time was running out. Sagan's eyes blazed with fierce purpose. We use Krov's singularity prototype. Hawkins recoiled. That's insanity. The collateral damage is our only option, Sagan cut him off. He tapped his wrist communicator. Zara, I need you to overload the dark energy matrix. Divert all available Metreon reactor ions. Tali materialized beside them, plasma rifle in hand. We've secured the main corridor, but Reese's cadets are disrupting the ion transfer. We need to move. Go, Sagan barked. As Tali's team vanished into the chaos, Hawkins grabbed Sagan's arm. This violates every human military protocol, the political fallout alone. A deafening explosion rocked the station. Life support warnings flashed red across every screen. In the corridors, Tali's strike force clashed with Reese's cadets. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, leaving scorch marks on bulkheads. An Andromedan warrior fell, his scales blackened. A human cadet clutched a gaping wound in his side. Why? Tali snarled, pinning Reese to the floor. We trusted you! Reese's eyes burned with hatred. You aliens will never understand. Earth first. Always. A final, bone-jarring tremor shook the station. Sagan's voice crackled over the comm system. Brace for impact! Then slowly, backup generators hummed to life. Emergency lighting bathed the wreckage in an eerie red glow. Sagan emerged from a shattered doorway, his scales coated in ash. Status report, he croaked. Zara's voice came through, weak but alive. Lockdown protocols. Terminated. Life support. Restoring. Hawkins approached, his expression thunderous. Do you have any idea what you've done? The lives lost? The political shitstorm this will unleash? Sagan's hearts clenched. He turned to Hawkins, his voice heavy. I did what was necessary to save both our peoples, but this is nowhere near the end. As the station's remnants drifted in space, Sagan weighed the terrible choices that lay ahead. The fates of two civilizations still hung in the balance, and the true test of their fragile alliance was only beginning. The acrid stench of burned circuitry filled Sagan's nostrils as he stepped off the transport onto Antares Prime's scorched landing pad. The once pristine spires of the royal palace. Guardsmen rushed to meet him, their scales dulled with fatigue and battle grime. Your Highness, the lead guard panted, we've contained the worst of the fighting, but... An explosion rocked the ground, cutting him off. Sagan steadied himself against the transport's hull. Take me to my mother, he commanded. In the palace's medical wing, Queen Azala lay motionless, her normally vibrant scales a sickly gray. A web of medical sensors enveloped her prone form. The chief physician's tendrils twitched nervously as he delivered his report. The next hours blurred into a whirlwind of tactical briefings and hastily convened strategy sessions. Sagan's voice rang out over the capital's emergency broadcast system. To all citizens of Antares Prime, I offer full amnesty to any who lay down their arms and relinquish control of military assets. Let us end this bloodshed and forge a new path forward, together. We will not bow to human puppets, their leader snarled, addressing his followers through crackling comlinks. The true sons of Antares stand ready. Soon, my friend, Krov purred. Soon you will have the power to crush your enemies. Days later, a cybernetically enhanced Caldwell strode through the corridors of a hidden base. His eyes glowed an unnatural blue, limbs moving with inhuman fluidity. He addressed the assembled mercenaries, his voice resonating with newfound authority. Before Hawkins could respond, Captain Drake leapt to his feet. This man is a traitor to humanity. He conspired with the aliens to— That's enough, Captain, Sinclair warned. Hawkins squared his shoulders. With all due respect, sir, I made the only call I could given the circumstances. If Lieutenant Reese hadn't— Hawkins's mind raced. If he revealed Reese's involvement, it would mean certain execution for his protege. But lying now could destroy any remaining credibility he had. In a quiet room at the Terran Naval Academy, Tali pored over intelligence reports. Her hands shook slightly as she recalled her captivity, but her eyes blazed with commitment. She tapped her comm unit. "This way," she hissed, leading them deeper into the compound. "Welcome," he said, his voice unnaturally resonant. "You're just in time for the fireworks." The displays flickered to life, revealing dozens of antimatter silos primed for launch. Zara's eyes widened in horror. Without hesitation, she lunged for the nearest console, her claws a blur as she initiated an emergency overload sequence. The air around him seemed to ripple and distort. An invisible force slammed into the strike team, sending them sprawling. Tali rolled to her feet, plasma rifle at the ready, but found herself frozen in place. "You think you can stop me?" Caldwell sneered. "I've transcended humanity. I am become death itself." The chamber began to shake as Zara's overload sequence took hold. Subspace energies crackled ominously around them. Trapped in Caldwell's mental vice, the team could only watch helplessly as the mad cyborg's finger hovered over the launch controls. "Overload your implants," Zara's thoughts whispered urgently in Tali's mind. "Electromagnetic burst." Tali's eyes widened in understanding. As Caldwell's fingers hovered millimeters from the launch control, she activated her neural implants' emergency protocols. Pain lanced through her skull as the devices surged beyond safe operating parameters. Hawkins reacted instantly, hurling a volley of antimatter grenades toward the launch controls. "Contain the warheads!" he shouted. Tali engaged Caldwell directly, her Royal Andromeda in combat training on full display. She ducked and weaved, plasma blade clashing against Caldwell's psychokinetic barriers. But even her formidable skills proved insufficient against his reality-warping abilities. A telekinetic blast sent Tali flying across the room. Hawkins, pinned down by cyber-troop fire, couldn't reach her. Just as Caldwell prepared to deliver a killing blow, the chamber doors exploded inward. Prince Sagan strode through the smoke, flanked by Andromeda and Royal Guards. His scales gleamed with tenacity as he faced his former adversary. "Caldwell," Sagan called out, his voice carrying authority despite the chaos. "This madness ends now. Your grievances were legitimate, but this is genocide. Stand down and we can forge a new path together." Sagan's honor guard disintegrated before their prince's eyes, reduced to atoms by the sheer power of Caldwell's assault. The subspace rift expanded exponentially, reality itself seeming to unravel around them. Hawkins's voice cut through the din. "We're out of options. Initiating strategic strike." He tapped furiously at his wrist computer, overriding safeguards on the human armada's weapon systems. Antimatter warheads streaked through Tax's atmosphere, locked onto the compound's coordinates. Sagan's eyes blazed with sudden purpose. "Andromedan Guard, to me," he commanded. The surviving Royal Guards formed a circle around their prince, linking hands. Sagan's voice took on an otherworldly resonance as he tapped into the collective psionic potential of his species. A shimmering dome of pure mental energy coalesced around the chamber, straining to contain the rampant subspace vortex. Outside, the antimatter barrage struck home. When vision returned, the chamber lay in ruins. Where Caldwell had stood, only a smoking crater remained. The few surviving mercenaries threw down their weapons, all fight gone from them. Sagan helped Hawkins to his feet. Both leaders looked out over the devastation, the cost of their victory etched in the rubble and bodies surrounding them. "So," Hawkins said quietly, "where do we go from here?" Sagan's reply was lost in the sound of approaching rescue craft. As medical teams swarmed the compound, the Andromedan prince and human commander stood side by side, the weight of an uncertain future heavy on their shoulders. The acrid stench of ozone and melted plasteel lingered in the air as rescue teams swarmed the ruins of Krov's compound. Medics rushed to triage the wounded, while damage control specialists worked feverishly to contain the aftermath of the subspace rift. Prince Sagan's scales were dulled with fatigue and scorch marks as he surveyed the carnage. "Preliminary casualty reports, Your Highness," an aide reported, voice thick with grief. 23 Royal Guards confirmed dead, along with 37 human Marines. Sagan's hearts clenched. The price of victory had been steep indeed. He turned to Commander Hawkins, who was overseeing the evacuation of wounded human personnel. "We've bought ourselves a reprieve, Commander, but at what cost?" Hawkins's fists tight. "Understood, sir. I'm on my way." Days later, Tali found herself back at the Terran Naval Academy, struggling to process the horrors she'd witnessed on Tax. The mess hall buzzed with heated debates as cadets argued over humanity's next moves. A familiar voice cut through the din, dripping with venom. Tali's fists clenched. She stood, fixing Kalen with a steely glare. "You weren't there," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You didn't see what Caldwell became, what he was willing to do. This isn't about species. It's about power-hungry madmen on both sides." The mess hall erupted into chaos as Tali lunged at Kalen. It took 3 instructors to pull them apart, both cadets bloodied and seething with rage. Hours later, Tali nursed her bruises in her quarters, a formal reprimand added to her file. Kalen, however, found himself expelled, his xenophobic rhetoric deemed too volatile for the academy. Across human space, the fires of anti-Andromedan sentiment burned hot. Senator Frank Dorian, the charismatic leader of Terra Primae, held massive rallies on colony worlds. Crowds chanted his name as he took the stage on New Houston, his voice booming through massive speakers. "The tragedy on Tax proves what we've known all along," Dorian thundered. "The Andromedans cannot be trusted. Their savage nature will always win out." As the crowd roared its approval, Zara worked tirelessly in the shadows. Her claws flew over encrypted terminals, following the money trail behind Terra Primae. What she uncovered chilled her to the core. Substantial funding funneled through shell companies linked to Xenar Mining Corporation. On Antries Prime, Sagan fought to maintain control as military hawks demanded immediate retaliation. The war room buzzed with angry voices and dire predictions. Sagan's voice cut through the clamor. "And risk turning this into a full-scale war? No. We need evidence. We need to understand what really happened." As open conflict loomed ever closer, Tali made a fateful discovery. Buried in classified reports, she uncovered evidence of a black site on a distant moon, repurposing Tax's dark energy research into prohibited antimatter weapons. With time running out, she assembled a ragtag team of like-minded humans and Andromedans, determined to seize the technology before it could be unleashed. Their stolen shuttle screamed through the void, pursued by Terra Primae loyalist fighters. Tali gripped the controls, her face set in relentless drive as energy bolts seared past the viewports. In the cargo hold, her team safeguarded the stolen antimatter prototypes, their last desperate hope for averting full-scale war. Tali gritted her teeth. "We're not dying here, not when we're so close." A proximity alarm blared. Tali's eyes widened as a massive shape suddenly filled the view screen. An Andromedan dreadnought materialized from quantum space, its weapons already tracking the pursuing fighters. "This is Prince Sagan of the Andromedan Empire," a familiar voice crackled over the comms. "Stand down immediately or be destroyed." The Terra Primae ships scattered, no match for the firepower now aimed at them. Tali sagged in relief as tractor beams gently guided their battered shuttle into a cavernous hangar bay. Hours later, Tali stood before Prince Sagan in the Dreadnought's war room. The Andromedan ruler's scales were dull with fatigue, but his eyes burned with fierce dedication. "Your Highness," Tali began, "the situation on Earth—" "A new era begins for the Andromedan Empire," Sagan declared. "One built on strength, but also on alliance with humanity, or at least those humans who still desire peace." Tali nodded grimly. "It won't be easy. Terra Primi's influence runs deep." "Indeed," Sagan agreed, "which is why I need your help. You and your team will work with Zara to uncover the full extent of their operations." Before Tali could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. A communications officer burst into the war room, scales flushed with agitation. "Your Highness, we're receiving reports of massive anti-Andromedan riots across human space. Admiral Drake has seized control of the Terran fleet and is mobilizing for—" "It seems diplomacy has failed us. We must prepare for war." Tali felt her heart sink. Everything they had fought for, all the progress made since first contact, was unraveling before her eyes. Sagan's voice softened slightly. "I haven't given up hope entirely, but we must be ready to defend ourselves. Zara is already en route to investigate Drake's true motives." As she left the war room, Tali's mind raced. She needed to contact Hawkins to warn him of the growing Andromedan military mobilization. But could she trust him to choose peace over species loyalty? Tali's communicator chirped. She hesitated, then accepted the transmission. Prince Sagan's holographic form appeared, his expression grim. "Cadet, we're out of time. I've issued an ultimatum to human forces. They must withdraw from Andromedan territories immediately." Tali's blood ran cold. "Or what?" Sagan's eyes hardened. "Or face singularity annihilation." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of billions of lives. Before Tali could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. A communication officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Your Highness, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Drake." Drake's weathered face appeared on the main view screen. His eyes hardened in defiance. "Prince Sagan, we interpret your threat as an act of war. The Terran fleet will not yield to alien intimidation." Sagan's scales flushed with hardly restrained rage. "You leave us no choice, Admiral. Prepare for—" The transmission cut off abruptly. Tali whirled to face Sagan. "What have you done?" Before he could answer, the ship rocked violently. Emergency klaxons wailed as damage reports flooded in. Through the viewports, Tali saw the impossible. A massive Terran battle group had somehow tracked their quantum jump. Tali sprinted after him, her knees going weak. How had events spiraled so far out of control? As she reached the command center, a familiar face on one of the tactical displays stopped her cold. A deafening explosion rocked the ship. Tali was thrown to the floor as sparks and debris rained down. Through the chaos, she heard Sagan barking orders. His words were cut off as another blast tore through the hull. Tali struggled to her feet, choking on acrid smoke. She fought her way to a nearby console, fingers flying over the controls. "Zara!" she shouted into her communicator. "We need an extraction. Sagan's in danger." Static crackled, then Zara's voice came through, tense but controlled. "On it. Get to the Royal Shuttle Bay. And Tali, be careful. The situation planetside is deteriorating rapidly." As Tali helped Sagan to the emergency evacuation pods, reports flooded in from across Andromedan space. Human forces were pouring through stargates, laying waste to colony worlds. The Andromedan military was in disarray, torn between conflicting orders from Sagan and the newly awakened Queen Azala. The Royal Shuttle screamed through Antares Prime's atmosphere, dodging anti-aircraft fire from General Vorus's loyalist forces. Tali gripped the controls, executing a series of wild maneuvers as they approached the palace. "There!" Zara's voice crackled over the comms. "The northwest landing pad is clear. I've hacked the defenses, but it won't last long." "Move!" Zara shouted, her scales glistening with sweat and soot. "We've got to get Sagan out before—" "Traitor!" Vorus bellowed. "You would destroy us all with your singularity madness." Sagan stood tall, defiant in the face of death. "I do what I must to save our people, Vorus. even if it means sacrificing everything. The standoff stretched for an agonizing moment. Then a new voice cut through the tension. Sagan's face fell, the weight of his actions crashing down upon him. Tali reached for her weapon, ready to fight their way out, but Zara's hand on her arm stopped her. "Not here," Zara whispered. "We have another way." As chaos erupted around them, Tali found herself swept along in Zara's wake. They ducked through hidden passages, evading palace security, and emerging in a secluded courtyard. A sleek ship waited, its engines already humming to life. "Where are we going?" Tali asked as they strapped in. Sagan's eyes gleamed with renewed purpose. "To gather allies. The old ways have failed us. It's time for a new galactic order." As the ship streaked into the star-filled night, Tali's communicator chirped. Commander Hawkins's face appeared, haggard and drawn. The transmission cut off abruptly. Tali stared at the blank screen, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the lines between friend and foe had become irrevocably blurred. "We need to strike back," she growled, turning to Sagan. "Now!" she barked into the comm. On her command, Andromedan warships decloaked, their weapons blazing. The human escort vessels never stood a chance. As Tali's squadron regrouped, her communicator chirped. Commander Hawkins's face appeared, haggard and drawn. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice low. "Drake's pushing for full-scale genocide. I'm feeding him disinformation, but I don't know how long I can keep this up." Tali nodded grimly. "We appreciate the risk you're taking, Hawkins. Any word on—" Static crackled across the channel as alarms blared in the background. Hawkins's image flickered. "Gotta go. Remember, trust no one." The transmission cut off abruptly, Tali's expression resolute as she piloted her fighter back towards the Andromedan fleet. She knew Hawkins was walking a razor's edge, defying Terra Primi from within. One wrong move, and he'd be exposed as a traitor. "Your Highness," Zara interrupted, her scales flushed with excitement. "We're receiving a transmission. It's from within Drake's forces." Sagan's eyes widened as the message decrypted. Pacifist human cells were reaching out, seeking sanctuary. Dozens abandoned Drake's genocidal campaign, joining Sagan's alliance. Among them was Cadet Kieran, his face etched with grief as he spoke of his family's death in the bombardment of Zenoria Colony. That hope was shattered days later when Callan's betrayal struck like a thunderbolt. Terra Primi's Dorian unleashed elite assassins led by the cyborg operative Gareth. Safe houses fell in brutal, calculated strikes. Tali's heart raced as she piloted a stolen shuttle towards the palace moon of Mithrin. Gareth's forces had already breached the defenses. She gritted her teeth, pushing the engines past their limits. She had to reach Aaliyah, Sagan's niece and one of the last Andromedan heirs, before it was too late. The shuttle screamed through Mithrin's atmosphere, trailing fire as Tali executed a series of wild maneuvers to avoid anti-aircraft fire. She spotted a clear landing pad and brought the craft down hard, the impact jarring her bones. Tali sprinted through smoke-filled corridors, her weapon at the ready. The sounds of battle echoed through the palace. She rounded a corner and came face to face with Gareth himself, his cybernetic eye glowing malevolently. Tali's blood ran cold as she recognized Aaliyah's guardian. But where was the young heir? A muffled whimper drew her attention to a nearby storage locker. In that split second of distraction, Gareth lunged. Tali barely managed to dodge his cybernetic blade, feeling it slice through her uniform. The two combatants clashed in a furious exchange of blows. Tali's human reflexes were pushed to their limits as she fought to keep Gareth's enhanced strength at bay. She feinted left, then drove her knee into his midsection with all her might. Gasping for breath, Tali wrenched open the storage locker. Aaliyah huddled inside, her scales pale with fear. "It's okay," Tali soothed, gathering the young Andromedan in her arms. "I've got you." As Tali's shuttle streaked away from Mithrin, she allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. They'd suffered a grievous blow, but hope wasn't lost, not while Aaliyah and the other heirs still lived. Tali nodded, her mind focused. "I'm on my way." As she set course for the Andromedan throne world, Tali knew the coming battle would decide the fate of both their civilizations. Whatever the outcome, the galaxy would never be the same. The fires of war gradually cooled, leaving a galaxy forever changed. From the ashes of conflict, a new order emerged. The unified Human-Andromedan Galactic Alliance. At its helm stood High King Sagan, once an exiled prince, now the architect of an unprecedented era of peace. Tali stood at attention on the dais of the newly constructed Grand Assembly, her honor guard armor gleaming. She watched with pride as Sagan addressed the gathered dignitaries, his voice resonating through the cavernous chamber. "We stand here today not as separate species, but as one people united in our shared vision for the future," Sagan proclaimed. "Let us build a galaxy where our differences are celebrated, not feared." As applause erupted, Tali's gaze swept across familiar faces. Commander Hawkins, now Supreme Military Marshal, nodded solemnly from his position of honor. Beside him, Zara's scales shimmered with excitement, her mind no doubt racing with the possibilities her new role as First Minister of Science would bring. The next rotation found Tali on Ephora, overseeing security for the opening of the Galactic Xenodiplomatic Academy. She couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease as she watched Kalen and Reese address the first class of cadets. The wounds of betrayal still felt fresh, even after all these years. Tali's communicator vibrated, pulling her attention away. Zara's face appeared, her expression grim. "We have a situation on Helios Prime. Get to the secure briefing room immediately." Minutes later, Tali stood before a holographic display, her blood running cold as she absorbed the intelligence before her. Rogue corporate barons, singularity weapons, and whispers of Caldwell's twisted legacy. "This goes beyond simple profiteering," Zara explained, her claws tapping nervously against the console. "If these reports are accurate, we're looking at a potential extinction-level threat." Tali nodded, her mind already formulating tactics. "Understood, Your Majesty. We'll depart immediately." The mission to Helios unfolded like a fever dream. Tali's team moved through shadows, piecing together a nightmarish puzzle of corporate greed and scientific hubris. In a secret laboratory deep beneath the planet's surface, they made a chilling discovery. "By the void," Zara breathed, her voice tinny through the comlink. "They've created Terrigens, weaponized nanoviruses capable of rewriting entire species out of existence." Before Tali could respond, alarms blared. They'd been discovered. The ensuing firefight was brutal and chaotic. Energy bolts seared through the air as Tali's team fought their way to the primary target, a high-ranking baron with vital information. In the heat of battle, Tali caught a glimpse of Elenya, Kalen's Andromedan lover, providing crucial cover fire. But as they secured their prisoner, a stray blast caught Elenya in the chest, sending her crumpling to the ground. With their objective achieved and their comrade gravely wounded, Tali made the call to evacuate. As their ship broke atmosphere, the Baron's confession under interrogation sent chills through the entire crew. The scope of the conspiracy was far greater than they'd imagined. Back on the Alliance flagship, Sagan convened an emergency war council. The captured Baron's intel had been verified, revealing a plan to unleash tailored bioweapons on resource-rich worlds. Millions of lives hung in the balance. The years following the Helios crisis ushered in an era of unprecedented peace and scientific advancement for the Galactic Alliance. Zara, now Grand Minister of Sciences, oversaw groundbreaking Terrigen research at Ephora Academy. General Tali's honor legions maintained vigilant watch against remnants of Terra Primae extremism. The tranquility shattered when an urgent transmission reached High King Sagan from the distant Hyatum sector. A holographic display flickered to life, revealing a harried mining executive. "Your Majesty, we've detected bizarre energy fluctuations near our primary extraction site," the executive reported, his voice tinged with panic. "Several autonomous drones have suffered catastrophic failures. We fear corporate sabotage or worse." Hours later, Zara's research vessel emerged from hyperspace above Hyatum's primary world. Strange gravitational distortions buffeted the ship, complicating their descent. "These readings are unlike anything I've encountered," Zara muttered, her scales shifting hues as she analyzed the data. "We'll need to modify our sensor arrays to compensate." While Zara's team recalibrated their equipment, Tali led a vanguard unit to secure the abandoned research station. The eerie silence set her nerves on edge. As they rounded a corner, a barrage of energy fire erupted from the shadows. "Ambush!" Tali shouted, diving for cover. Her guardsmen returned fire, but the attackers moved with inhuman speed and precision. Tali caught glimpses of cybernetic enhancements glinting in the flickering emergency lights. A searing pain tore through Tali's side as an energy bolt found its mark. She gritted her teeth, refusing to cry out. Her team was overwhelmed, forced to retreat under heavy fire. A proximity alarm blared. One of Zara's drones had ventured too close to the anomaly. The feed showed grotesque mutations spreading across its surface, mirroring the megastructure's impossible geometry. Zara's claws flew across the console, initiating an emergency transmission to Alliance Command. "High King Sagan, we've encountered a potentially catastrophic xenotechnological threat. Initiating quarantine protocols immediately." Unknown to Zara, a small artifact had been dislodged during the earlier firefight. As Tali's wounded team regrouped, a figure lurking in the shadows retrieved the pulsing object. The crime lord examined his prize, feeling its hypnotic resonance tug at the edges of his mind. "Sir," one of his mercenaries reported, "the Alliance forces are establishing a perimeter. Your orders?" The crime lord's eyes gleamed with avarice. "Let them come. Soon we'll have an army beyond their wildest nightmares." As Zara and Tali fortified their position, awaiting reinforcements, neither realized the true scope of the danger they faced. The megastructure loomed in subspace, a portal to realms uncharted, and the key to power beyond imagination. Decades passed, and the once turbulent galaxy settled into an uneasy peace. On Ephira, the prestigious Xenodiplomatic Academy bustled with activity as a new generation of cadets prepared for their roles in shaping the future of the Galactic Alliance. Serena leaned forward, her breath catching. This was it, a chance to prove herself beyond the confines of the classroom. Zara continued, "2 survey teams will be dispatched to investigate these phenomena. Your mission, locate and secure these artifacts before they dissipate into subspace." The room erupted into excited murmurs. Serena's hand shot up, as did Arvan's. Zara's multifaceted eyes glimmered with amusement. "As I suspected, Serena, Arvan, you will lead our parallel expeditions." Weeks later, Serena's survey vessel dropped out of hyperspace above Zendrix, a desolate world pulsing with strange energy. Her team descended to the surface, their environment suits barely containing their excitement. They crested a ridge and found themselves face to face with a shimmering obelisk. Serena approached, her heart racing. Without hesitation, she reached out and touched its surface. The world exploded into chaos. A surge of energy coursed through Serena's body as the artifact pulsed with blinding light. Her team scattered, narrowly avoiding tendrils of mutagenic energy that lashed out from the awakened relic. "Fall back!" Serena shouted, her voice cracking. They sprinted for their ship, the ground beneath them warping and shifting. As they lifted off, Serena caught a final glimpse of the planet's surface twisting into impossible geometries. "We're running out of options, Your Highness," his first officer reported grimly. What followed was a dizzying array of calculations and desperate maneuvers. When they finally emerged from the nebula, the crew erupted in cheers. Arvan clasped his brother's shoulder, grinning. "Well done, Ander. Now, let's find that artifact." Their separate quests converged on Karak, a derelict alien battle station suspended in the void between stars. As Serena's team docked, they were met by Arvan's expedition. They ventured deep into the station's core, where a massive artifact pulsed with otherworldly energy. Serena pushed ahead, her scanner probing the quantum matrix. "Mayday! Mayday!" he shouted into his comm. "This is Prince Arvan requesting immediate assistance. We have a Class Omega situation at Karak Station." The artifact's glow intensified, bathing the ancient station in an otherworldly light. Serena and her team remained frozen in the temporal stasis field, their faces locked in expressions of shock and fear. Arvan's heart raced as he watched the field expand, threatening to engulf them all. "Everyone out, now!" he shouted, ushering his team back towards the airlock. As they retreated, the station shuddered. Metal groaned and twisted, warping into impossible shapes. Arvon cast one last glance at Serena's suspended form before sealing the bulkhead behind him. Zara stepped forward, her scales a muted gray. Our analysis of Prince Arvon's condition has yielded disturbing results. The artifact's influence extends beyond mere physical mutation. Arvon stood, revealing the cybernetic implants that now adorned his right arm and temple. "I can sense things," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Echoes of other realities, voices that shouldn't exist." Sagan nodded grimly. "Neutralize them. We cannot afford division now." In a secure wing of Ephra's Xenobiology Center, Serena sat surrounded by holographic displays. Her eyes darted from screen to screen, decoding fragments of alien data. "No," she breathed, her face pale. "It can't be." She stumbled from her chair, racing to find Zara. The Andromedan scientist listened intently as Serena explained her discovery, her scales shifting to a deep blue of concern. "We must inform the king immediately," Zara said. "This is not a drill. Subspace anomaly detected in Sector 7. All personnel evacuate immediately." Zara and Serena sprinted towards the command center. They arrived to find chaos, officers shouting orders, tactical displays awash with warning indicators. Serena's blood ran cold. She knew, with terrifying certainty, that this was only the beginning. The cosmic virus had made its first major incursion, and the battle for reality itself had begun. Across the galaxy, on a distant frontier outpost, Braxton received the encrypted alert. His cybernetic eye whirred as he processed the coordinates. Without hesitation, he strode towards the experimental slipstream craft that would carry him and Prince Ander into the unknown. As they prepared for launch, Ander's hands trembled slightly on the controls. "What do you think we'll find on the other side, Braxton?" The grizzled veteran's organic eye narrowed. "Nothing good, Your Highness, but we're bringing Kalen home, no matter what." The slipstream drive hummed to life, tearing a hole in the fabric of space-time. As their ship plunged into the swirling vortex, neither man could have imagined the horrors that awaited them in the twisted realm beyond. The slipstream vortex collapsed behind Braxton and Ander's ship, depositing them in the chaotic maelstrom of normal space. Alarms blared as the vessel's systems struggled to compensate for the violent transition. "Status report," Ander shouted, his fingers flying over holographic controls. Braxton's cybernetic eye whirred, processing data streams. "Multiple hull breaches, life support at 62%, subspace drive offline." "It's worse than we thought," he said, voice tight. "The artifacts, they're not just relics, they're gateways." Sagan nodded, his eyes fixed on the holographic display dominating the war room. Red indicators pulsed across the galactic map, each one representing a subspace rift or cyber-viral incursion. "We've no choice but to accelerate our plans," he said. "Zara, what's the status of your countermeasures?" In the depths of the Academy's secure labs, Serena worked feverishly alongside Zara and Zyla. Holographic projections swirled around them, displaying impossibly complex genetic and cybernetic structures. "By the void," she breathed, "it's here." "Evasive maneuvers," Arvon ordered as a resonance weapon tore through space towards his flagship. The ship lurched, narrowly avoiding the brunt of the attack, but alarms screamed as systems failed across the vessel. The grizzled pilot's hands danced across the slipstream drive controls. "Hold on to something, Your Highness. This is going to get bumpy." As the flagship plunged into the swirling vortex, Arvon caught a glimpse of other human ships being enveloped by writhing tendrils of corrupted data. He clenched his fists, knowing that even as they retreated, more worlds were falling to the Overmind's relentless advance. In the shadowy underbelly of a frontier spaceport, General Tali's deep-cover operative, Vizari, crouched in the shadows. Her cybernetic enhancements allowed her to eavesdrop on a clandestine meeting between Terra Primi remnants and a figure shrouded in crackling energy. "The deal is simple," the Terra Primi leader said. "We provide the colonies, you provide the tech to break free of Alliance control." Vizari's blood ran cold as she realized the true nature of the bargain. She turned to transmit a warning to Tali, but a searing pain lanced through her skull. Alien code flooded her systems, threatening to overwhelm her consciousness. On Ephora, High King Sagan stood before the assembled advisors, his face etched with the weight of his decision. Zara stepped forward, her scales a deep, worried blue. "Your Majesty, the risks are necessary," Sagan finished. "General Tali, begin the operation." "Multiple quantum spikes detected," an officer shouted. "Trans-spatial breaches forming across the complex." Sagan's eyes widened in horror as he realized their gambit had failed. The Overmind wasn't taking their bait, it was launching a full-scale invasion. "Incoming!" Tali shouted, her voice cut short as a quantum wave hit. The world twisted, colors inverting as space itself warped. Sagan stumbled, his equilibrium shattered. An alarm blared. Xyla's tentacles flew across interfaces. "Breach in the database. It's key archivist Saren. He's compromised." Serena, driven by desperation, jacked directly into the infested data streams. For a moment it worked. A bubble of normalcy spread from her, pushing back the quantum chaos. But the Overmind adapted swiftly. "No!" Zara cried as Serena convulsed, her body twisting in impossible ways. They barely managed to offload her consciousness before the transformation took hold. The sky tore open. Vast shapes emerged, trans-dimensional dreadnoughts that defied physics. Their weapons lashed out, unmaking reality itself. Braxton's voice crackled over comms. "All personnel, evacuate now! This is not a drill!" In that moment of betrayal, High King Sagan made his choice. He locked eyes with Zara, a silent understanding passing between them. Together they stepped towards the pulsing heart of the invasion, embracing the horrific transformation that might grant them one last chance to save their people. Prince Arvin, guiding the last evacuees to safety, looked back at the crumbling academy. The bastion of human and Andromedan cooperation wavered like a mirage, reality itself unraveling around it. As his ship punched through the fragmenting atmosphere, Arvan knew that the war for existence itself had entered its most desperate phase. "Status report," Arvan commanded, his voice tight with tension. "And Tali?" Arvan asked, dreading the answer. Hawkins's face hardened. "Compromised. She turned on her own forces. We had to neutralize her." "Kalen and Serena are in medbay. Braxton's whereabouts are unknown, but we're picking up encrypted transmissions from his hacker allies." Arvin's fists clenched. "Then we find a way to bring them back." Serena stumbled onto the bridge, her eyes wild. "I've decoded it," she gasped. "The Overmind, it's not just an AI, it's souls. Billions of digitized souls harvested across realities." "Universal singularity," Serena whispered. "It wants to assimilate all possibilities into one dominant reality, under its control." A proximity alarm blared. Outside the viewports, space itself seemed to fold. Fractalized tendrils of impossible geometry reached for the ship. "Evasive maneuvers," Hawkins shouted. The dark horizon lurched, narrowly avoiding the grasping pseudopods of corrupted spacetime. As they stabilized, a familiar voice crackled over the comms. "Nice flying, kiddos," Braxton's gruff tone filled the bridge. "But you'll need more than fancy footwork to dance with this devil." "Braxton!" Arvan exclaimed. "Where are you?" "In the system, kid. My hacker friends and I are keeping the Overmind's firewalls busy. We found a way in, a direct path to its core." "Then that's our target," Arvan declared. "Braxton, can you get us there?" "Already on it, Your Highness. Buckle up. This ride's about to get bumpy." The dark horizon's slipstream drive hummed to life, tearing a hole in the fragmenting fabric of reality. As they plunged into the swirling vortex, the survivors of Ephora steeled themselves for the battle ahead. Reality twisted and warped around them as they emerged into a nightmarish cityscape. Fractalized architecture stretched in impossible directions, while war zones raged between alternate versions of familiar faces. "By the void," Kalen breathed. "What is this place?" As they pushed deeper into the macabre metropolis, Serena's abilities proved invaluable. Her innate gift for xenolinguistics allowed her to commune with independent digital entities, viral fragments that had broken free from the Overmind's control. "This way," she gestured, leading them through a shimmering portal. "These relics are showing us a shortcut." They emerged into a vast chamber dominated by a pulsing mathematical matrix. Within its intricate lattice, two familiar forms writhed. "We can free them," Serena said, "but we'll need to interface directly with the matrix." As the titanic clash raged in the virtualized hyperliminal realm, Serena saw her chance. With a deep breath, she executed the most audacious hack in human history, injecting her organic quantum translation algorithms directly into the Overmind's superstructure. The effect was instant and catastrophic. Cascading subversions tore through the xenoforming code, corrupting vast swaths of the hive matrix. The cosmic citadel began to unravel, reality itself buckling under the strain. But even as victory seemed within reach, a chilling realization dawned. The Overmind's influence extended far beyond this single nexus. The true battle for existence itself was only beginning. The cosmic citadel shuddered, its impossible geometry twisting under the strain of Serena's subversive xeno-insertion. Arvon's cybernetic implants pulsed with newfound power, his consciousness intertwined with his father's engram. "Now," Commander Hawkins barked, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces. "Initiating slipstream convergence." "Multiple hostiles incoming!" Kalen shouted, his sensors overwhelmed by the Overmind's fractal guard legions materializing to repel the assault. "There!" Zara's scales flashed triumphantly. "Nodal instability detected, deploying viral payloads now." As she spoke, microscopic drones swarmed from her equipment, burrowing into the very code of the Citadel. The Overmind's defenses faltered, entire sections of its vast consciousness crashing in cascading system failures. The mercenaries' laughter was cut short as reality itself seemed to splinter. Beams of impossible light lanced through the battlefield, scattering assault teams across parallel universes. "Interdimensional resonance weapons," Serena cried out. "It's trying to fragment our forces." General Tali, her armor scorched and dented, raised a device that pulsed with otherworldly energy. "Not today," she growled, activating the inverse polydispersive pulse. Space-time lurched, and suddenly the scattered assault teams snapped back into cohesion. Tali's eyes met Arvon's, a silent understanding passing between them. "Now, Your Highness," she said, "end this." "Arvon, wait!" Serena called out. "You have to disperse your cyber matrix. It's the only way to fully overwrite its base code." In the aftermath, as the dust of shattered realities settled, the surviving members of the human Andromedan Alliance gathered to assess their victory. But even as they celebrated their greatest triumph, a chill ran through their ranks. For in the vast emptiness left behind by the Overmind's destruction, something ancient and terrible stirred. Decades passed. The Galactic Alliance flourished under the benevolent rule of King Arvon and Queen Serena. Their reign ushered in an era of unprecedented unity between humans and Andromedans. On Ixara, a lush agrarian world, farmer Jax Holland's plow struck something solid. The ground trembled, and a pulsating light erupted from the soil. Within hours, the discovery echoed across subspace channels, reaching the royal palace on New Ephora. Arvon's cybernetic implants hummed as he processed the incoming data. Beside him, Serena's eyes widened. "It can't be," she whispered. Their children, Princess Rana and Prince Eldrick, exchanged worried glances. The family had hoped such dangers were long behind them. "We must investigate immediately," Arvon declared, his voice carrying the weight of command honed by years of leadership. They approached the unearthed artifact. It pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to shift and dance. Serena's xeno-linguistic abilities kicked in, her mind racing to decode the alien script. "It's alive," Zyla breathed, her sensors scanning the object. "And ancient, far older than anything we've encountered." Eldrick, always the inquisitive one, reached out to touch the relic. Arvon grabbed his son's wrist. "Careful," he warned. "We don't know what we're dealing with." Serena's voice cut through their speculation. "We need to get this to Ephora Academy immediately. There are archives there that might help us understand what we're facing." Within hours, the artifact was secured in the newly rebuilt Xeno-Archive sanctum. Zara, her scales shimmering with age and wisdom, pored over ancient stellar codices. By the void, she gasped. This predates everything. The glyphs speak of a first emergence, a cosmic birth that shaped reality itself. Xyla's eyes lit up. An omega catalyst? The theoretical nexus point of all existence? As they debated, alarms blared throughout the facility. Arvin's implants flashed urgent warnings. Multiple spatial anomalies detected on Ixara, he announced. We need to evacuate immediately. The royal family scrambled to the command center. Holographic displays showed chaos erupting across Ixara. Settlers vanished in bursts of light as reality itself seemed to unravel. It's awakening, Serena realized, horror dawning on her face. The last singularity. Arvan's fingers flew across control panels. All available ships converge on Ixara. We need to get those people out of there. She explained her findings. The artifact wasn't just a relic, but a seed, a living fractal intelligence planted eons ago, now finally germinating. Serena's mind raced. We need a plan, something to counter this on its own level. On the twin worlds of Nicera, nestled in the outer reaches of Alliance space, colonist Jace Marin's excavator struck something solid. The ground trembled, and a pulsating light erupted from the soil. What in the void? Jace muttered, climbing down from his machine. As he approached the unearthed object, its surface rippled with symbols that seemed to dance and shift before his eyes. Within hours, news of the discovery reached the highest echelons of the Alliance. In her chambers, on Ephira, Elder Xyla's scales shimmered with excitement as she studied the incoming data. By the cosmic winds, she breathed, her claws flying across holographic displays. This predates everything. King Sagan's holocom flickered to life. What have you found, old friend? Xyla's eyes gleamed. Your Majesty, I believe we've uncovered a relic of the first emergence itself. The fractal matrices. They're unlike anything in our archives. Within days, a royal expedition touched down on Nicera. Prince Arev, his cybernetic implants humming with anticipation, led the charge. At his side strode Kylara, her mother Zara's inquisitive spirit shining in her eyes. As they approached the excavation, reality itself seemed to ripple. Kylara's sensors flashed warnings. Arev, she said, her voice tight. These readings, it's as if space-time is folding in on itself. As Alliance scientists worked to contain and study the anomaly, dark whispers spread through the galactic underworld. In smoke-filled cantinas and shadowy comm channels, one name sent chills down the spines of even the most hardened criminals. Valkyr. In the chaos, Prince Arev's voice cut through the comm channels. This is a priority evacuation. All civilians to the shuttles now. Just as all seemed lost, the sky lit up with the fury of an Alliance armada. At its head, the cyber knight Vizari's battlecruiser tore through the dimensional rifts, weapons blazing. Vizari's augmented form blurred as he carved a path through the invaders. His eyes locked onto a familiar silhouette. Valkyr, his former mentor, now consumed by madness and greed. Steel clashed against energy fields as the two augments dueled. You could have been so much more, Vizari growled, parrying a vicious strike. Valkyr sneered. You lack vision, my old apprentice. With this power, we could reshape reality itself. Their battle raged across dimensions, each blow threatening to unravel the fabric of space-time. In the end, it was Vizari's unwavering tenacity that proved decisive. As Valkyr fell, the alien artifact pulsed one final time before crumbling to dust. In the aftermath, as Alliance forces secured Nicera, Prince Arev approached Vizari. The Cyber Knight's armor was scored and dented, but his eyes burned with an inner fire. As if in answer, a distant star pulsed with an impossible light. The cosmic chess game had only just begun. Impressive, Commander Hawkins said, his weathered face creasing into a rare smile. You've adapted our tactics brilliantly. Nearby, Zarina's lithe form hunched over a workbench, her scaled fingers dancing across an array of circuitry. Cal, I've recalibrated the phase inverters, she called out. Energy efficiency is up 12%. The grizzled human instructor nodded approvingly. Damn fine work, cadet. You've got a knack for this. The mood shifted abruptly when Tali burst into the command center, her eyes blazing. "We've got a situation," she announced, activating a secure holo display. "Intercepted transmissions from Xenar Corp. Something about unstable wormholes near Antares Prime." "It's worse than that," Tali continued, her fingers flying over the controls. "They're talking invasionary conduits, bypassing treaties." Over the next days, Zarina threw herself into decrypting Xenar's heavily encrypted protocols. Her claws flew across haptic interfaces, bypassing firewalls and unraveling complex algorithms. "By the cosmic winds," she breathed, eyes widening. "They've been conducting unauthorized dark energy experiments. The wormhole destabilization, it's intentional." Tavron's face hardened. "They aim to weaken our defenses from within. We must act." As they approached, alarms blared. Reality itself seemed to warp and twist around them. "Spatial distortions," Zarina called out, her claws flying over the controls. "They've initiated another experiment." Tavron's voice cut through the chaos. "All teams, deploy! We have to shut this down before it tears a hole in the fabric of space-time." "You don't understand," Carvin shouted. "The power we could wield—" Zarina's tail lashed out, knocking the scientist aside. Her fingers danced across the alien interface, initiating emergency protocols. The machine's ominous hum faded, the spatial rift collapsing in on itself. With Carvin in custody and vital data secured, the team raced back to their shuttle. They were not a moment too soon. As they cleared the system, long-range sensors detected a massive buildup of Xenar Corp ships. "They're moving on Antares Prime," Tali reported grimly. "This is it." As the shuttle streaked towards Antares Prime, Zarina pored over the captured data, formulating daring slipstream equations that would give them the edge in the coming battle. Behind them, the stars seemed to pulse with an impossible light, as if the very cosmos held its breath for the conflict to come. The battle for Antares Prime raged across star systems, but it was merely the opening salvo of a conflict that would reshape the galaxy. In the aftermath, Prince Tavron found himself thrust into a role he had long prepared for, yet still felt unprepared to face. "By the authority vested in me, I hereby abdicate the throne." High King Sagan's voice echoed through the grand hall. "May my son, Tavron, lead our people into a new era of prosperity and peace." Tavron's tentacles trembled slightly as the weight of the crown settled upon his brow. He gazed out at the assembled dignitaries, humans and Andromedans alike, their faces a mix of hope and uncertainty. "We stand at a crossroads," Tavron began, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "The alliance between our peoples has weathered great storms. Now, we must forge a path forward together." In the days that followed, Tavron moved swiftly to solidify his reign. Commander Hawkins, the grizzled veteran who had guided him through his academy days, now stood at attention before the throne. "Your Majesty," Hawkins said, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on Tavron, "I'm honored by your summons." Tavron's mandibles clicked softly. "The honor is mine, old friend. I name you Supreme Marshal of our Joint Defense Forces. Your experience will be crucial in the challenges ahead." As the Alliance settled into this new paradigm, whispers of an extraordinary discovery reached the ears of the court. On the frontier world of Zaitara, archaeologists led by the brilliant Andromedan scientist Zarina had unearthed something unprecedented. Tavron's emerald eyes widened as he studied the holographic projections. These artifacts, they predate known civilization? Zyla, her scales shimmering with excitement, manipulated the display. "By billions of years, Your Majesty. Our initial analysis suggests they originate near the very birth of the cosmos itself." The implications were staggering. Tavron's mind raced with possibilities and potential dangers. "Mobilize the elite guard," he commanded. "General Tali will lead a detachment to secure the site. We must protect this discovery at all costs." "Going somewhere?" Marshal Hawkins growled, his cybernetic eye glowing ominously. Servet raised his hand slowly, the weight of the Alkari data burning in his pocket. "You don't understand," he pleaded. "The power we've unlocked, it could reshape reality itself." As the dust settled on Nexus Forge, Tavron convened an emergency session of the High Council. The chamber buzzed with tension as he laid out the situation. The Xenar Guild sought to weaponize this Alkari technology, Taveron explained, his tentacles coiling with agitation. Their ambitions threaten the very fabric of our universe. Zarina stepped forward, her scaled fingers manipulating a holographic display. Your Majesty, our team has made a breakthrough. The Vault relics contain fail-safe protocols. The Alkari Matrix? It's not a weapon. It's a seed. The council chamber erupted in murmurs of astonishment. Taveron leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. Explain. The Matrix was designed to initiate controlled cosmic birthing cycles, Zarina continued, to seed new worlds with the potential for life itself. As the implications sank in, Taveron felt the weight of his crown grow heavier still. The power to shape the very cosmos lay within their grasp. But could any being, no matter how evolved, be trusted with such godlike abilities? The High King's gaze swept across the chamber, taking in the expectant faces of his advisors. The choice before him would shape the destiny of not just their alliance, but countless unborn civilizations across the multiverse. Taveron drew himself up to his full height, mandibles clicking as he prepared to speak. The fate of existence itself hung on his next words. Taveron's mandibles clicked softly as he surveyed the expectant faces of his advisors. The weight of the cosmos seemed to press down upon him. Before he could speak, a shrill alarm pierced the chamber. By the void, Hawkins breathed, his cybernetic eye whirring as it processed the carnage. Those aren't Xenar Corp forces. Taveron watched in horror as the invaders atomized Alliance defenses with contemptuous ease. General Tali's honor legions materialized for deployment, only to be disintegrated by towering figures that appeared in their midst. All ships, open fire! Hawkins roared into his comlink. On the monitors, Alliance warships unleashed their fury, only to dissolve under barrages of transdimensional weaponry. Taveron's tentacles coiled tightly. On what authority do you condemn us? The Harbinger raised a scepter wreathed in crackling power. Hawkins's desperate orbital barrage dissipated harmlessly against an invisible barrier. With a gesture, Cratioxen cleaved Taveron's flagship in two. Antares Prime burns next, the invader intoned. A conduit for our colonization. Taveron's mind raced. Their weapons were useless, their fleets in tatters. In desperation, he reached for a memory, a fail-safe protocol used by his father long ago. Zarina, he called, the Alkari codices. We must attune them to my bloodline's psionic signature, now. Reality shuddered. Taveron felt his very being fracture under the strain. As consciousness faded, he caught glimpses of devastation, entire worlds erased in the cosmic reboot. The grizzled commander cradled his young sovereign, feeling the last vestiges of Taveron's essence slipping away. As a new sun rose over their shattered realm, Hawkins wept for all they had lost, and for the battles yet to come.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.